So I'm breaking in my new to me bike, a 96 Harley Davidson FLSTN Softail Heritage Nostalgia, and I've been having some trouble starting it. It eventually starts, but I think I'm not working the choke properly, so we're going to dive in with the owner's manual and figure this out. Got my owner's manual out for my motorcycle, so let's figure out how to operate this petcock fuel supply thing on the carburetor. The fuel supply valve is located under the fuel tank. Fuel supply to the carburetor is shut off when the handle is in the horizontal position or the engine is turned off. Turning the handle down to the vertical position turns on the main fuel supply. Turning handle up to a vertical position turns on reserve supply. Valve is vacuum operated and will open and close when the engine is turned off. To always maintain a reserve supply, do not operate the motorcycle with the valve in the reserve position after refueling. That's what the owner manual says. Let's see how that translates to reality. Let's check out this baby from a cold start with a carburetor. It's not like fuel injection, so you have to do a step before just turning ignition and putting in gear and pulling out. So we have to enrich the fuel mixture, and with the FLSTN, they use an enricher. It's right down here on the side of the bike, and this choke. So you have to push that in, and then of course make sure it's in neutral. Give it a little bit of pump on the throttle. I always forget, is it pull out or push in? So I'm going to pull out this time. So I'm going to do the opposite of what I was just doing. What's going on, man? So it appears the Frankenglide needs a little bit of carburetor work. But why? What is causing the carburetor not to work? I really want to know. So I think it's best that I research how a carburetor works. That way I can understand what's going on here. So I think it's time for a Kenny Quest The More You Know moment. A carburetor is used to mix gasoline into the intake airflow with ideal volume and proper timing. But how does this all work? Our carburetor works by utilizing pressure differences. When air flows, the air pressure is lower than the atmospheric pressure. This is called the Bernoulli principle. This principle states that the faster the airflow, the lower the air pressure. Due to this pressure drop, fuel is able to be sucked into the air stream. To get faster airflow, we need to add Venturi in the middle of the air hose. Venturi is a word for a pipe that narrows. A Venturi is a section of air hose with a smaller diameter. Its function is to accelerate the airflow. So according to the Bernoulli's law, air pressure can be even smaller. It makes fuel more easily sucked into the air stream. So the carburetor uses the Bernoulli principle to mix gasoline into the airstream towards the intake manifold. But how does the carburetor control the engine RPM? According to this anatomy, this particular carburetor is a variable Venturi carburetor. My Softail is often referenced as a constant velocity carburetor, which by positioning the main jets is held to a steady rate of airflow regardless of the engine speed, thus the use of a variable Venturi, a pipe that narrows, and a steady rate of airflow. This provides constant velocity, aka CV carb, Harley Davidson stock carb for my Softail. The time controlling RPM is done by adjusting the width of the Venturi. It's helpful to know the following about a carburetor. A piston functions to regulate the width of the Venturi. A main jet is used to distribute fuel into the Venturi. The idle air channel is an additional channel to flow the air at RPM. The pilot jet functions to distribute fuel to the idle air channel. Lastly, there is a middle jet. This is a pointed needle that adjusts the width of the main jet according to the piston position, so when the engine is idle, the piston is in the lower position. It makes the Venturi very narrow, and the main jet is also covered by a needle jet. This condition forces air to flow through the idle air channel and fuel out through the pilot jet when we pull the RPM handle, position is lifted. It makes the Venturi wider and the main jet is open so that greater air volume flow through the Venturi and fuel is also sucked through the main jet. The higher the piston position, the wider the Venturi will be. The wider the Venturi, the greater the airflow, and the result is faster engine RPM. We know that the fuel tank is positioned higher on the bike than a carburetor. So why doesn't fuel overflow? Because there is a float system that makes sure the fuel doesn't overflow. This system only utilizes float movement to close the fuel from the tank. So when the fuel in the float chamber is empty, the float goes down and the float needle is open, so that makes gasoline fill the float chamber. When the gasoline is full, the float rises and the needle closes the fuel. So there is no fuel flow to the float chamber. It makes sure the gasoline doesn't overflow. When the gasoline is in the float chamber, decreases, the float drops, and the gasoline returns to fill the float chamber. Let's talk about those screws on the side of the carburetor. The screws are used to control the idle RPM. The idle air screw is used to adjust the width of the air channel, so when it's tightened, the idle air channel becomes narrower so that less air passes through. The piston screw will adjust the height of the piston when idle. If it is tightened, the piston is lifted and it makes more airflow by a Venturi.
Meanwhile,
that's on. Pull off the choke. Push in the choke. Alright, pull it out. I think we have some Benito's Law issues here with the Venturi. Time to check the bike into Wanderer Motors garage. But if I do that, Bike Week's coming up and I won't be able to make Bike Week. What to do?
Do I check my bike into my mechanic, or do I take a chance and roll the dice and attend Bike Week? Tune in next time to find out.
What the hell's going on?
Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications. Bye for now.